Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's web seminar, Is Sourcing Optimization Ready to Go Mainstream? We want to thank you for taking some time out of your day today to attend today's session. We're gonna go ahead and get started here in just a moment. Okay. We are recording today's webinar session, so we will make the recording available to you and any of your colleagues that you may wish to visit the session at a later time. I want to introduce first today's speakers, Martin and David. You can come off of video and mute at this time. My name is Jennifer Sikora. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at Keelvar. I'll be moderating today's webinar discussion. This will be more of a panel style format, but we will have some slides that we'll be talking to. Our two subject matter experts today are Martin and David. I'll let you each introduce yourselves and a little bit about your background. Martin?
Hi everybody. So my name is Martin Sirna. I'm a senior analyst in Keelvar in the customer success role. And I have a background in procurement consulting and been actually working with sourcing optimization since 2009.
Hi everyone, David Site. I'm on the pre-sales team at Keelvar. I've been working with sourcing optimization technology for going on about 15 years now.
Great, thank you both. And our agenda for today, we're going to talk a bit about sourcing optimization and its background and its opportunity. We're going to give you some real ROI examples that customers are experiencing with this type of a solution. We're going to talk about how to identify opportunities for sourcing optimization, especially around some spend categories that you may be considering. We'll give you a couple examples and talk about some ways that customers might roll out and implement sourcing optimization, and then just some ideas for how you might look at evaluating the different solution options that are out there. So just very quickly, Keelvar, just so you understand who we are and our background in this area, we are a best of breed software service software provider. We focus specifically on sourcing optimization and how to automate aspects of sourcing events and sourcing optimization. We spun out of an AI research laboratory in Ireland and are based in Cork. Although we have a team that is global today, we have a really agile product development focus, working with lots of blue chip global customers, everywhere in all parts of the world, and have had a lot of recognitions, from places like Spend Matters and Inbound Logistics and Ardent Partners and Gartner for our innovation and technology in sourcing optimization. And just to give you a sense of some of the customers that we work with on this, as you can see, many of these are supply chain based companies with a lot of complexity, many different types of spend categories. So these are just a sense of who we work with today. All right, so the first topic I'm going to throw out to our panel is, let's talk a little bit more about what sourcing optimization is and why people might consider it. So just before I hand it over to David and Martin for comment, just some background for many of you who may not know sourcing optimization that well. It really did emerge as a productization, or products emerged in this field in the early 2000s. So it's been, productized as a solution for about 2 decades now. And a lot of expert consultants were often hired to drive sourcing optimization by applying, basically the products as well as the consultants would apply an area of mathematics called combinatorial optimization. We're not going to do a test on that later or anything, but what it's essentially doing is this complex form of mathematics has now found its way into a product solution in the form of technology, and it has been in the market for over 2 decades now. The great news about this is its ROI. I know, David, you wanted to kind of comment on what kind of ROI this is generating for people.
Yeah, in almost every case, usually the first sourcing event that they conduct utilizing a sourcing optimization technology, it will more than pay for the entire subscription of the tool. And that's even a medium-sized event. So when I look at, any kind of procurement technology from upstream to downstream, I think by a long shot, sourcing optimization has the biggest return on investment, and it's a real quick return on investment, hard dollar savings.
And Martin, you've worked with a lot of customers even before your time at Keelvar. What do you agree with David on this?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And what I would add to this is that sourcing optimization is often boxed for as a solution for certain categories. And to be honest, my first experience with sourcing optimization wasn't in transportation. It's kind of given as a category for sourcing optimization, but was in a MRO parts category. So it's not really limited to certain type of events.
Yeah, great. And Keelvar in particular, we launched our sourcing optimizer much more recently than what we call sort of the first generation sourcing optimization products. Ours has been on the market since 2014. So the architecture and the way we've approached usability of the product has a much more modern bent to it than some of the earlier products. But again, these solutions in general have proven their worth in the market. So this webinar today is really about us talking about, like, let's expand the application for sourcing optimization and find more opportunities so that procurement teams can benefit. So we're going to get into, in a moment, just what makes it so special, right? So I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add that, what sourcing optimization is able to do is 100% impossible in Microsoft Excel. And I think that's a key point. Even for you black belt Excel users using Solver, there's things in this technology that you're not going to be able to do in Excel and not be able to achieve those savings.
Awesome. All right, so let's talk about what makes it so special, right? Why is sourcing optimization so remarkable and so much different than Excel or even just a basic ERFP tool? So we'll let you guys jump in on this.
Yeah, I guess, if you don't mind, Martin, when you talk about flexible bidding, the first box on the left, flexible bidding gives suppliers the ability to reveal innovation as well as savings opportunities that you may have not been aware of. Things like different pricing with different contract lengths for the same items, or minimum order quantity, maybe a different price with a different MOQ, or quality variations within the same item with different pricing. Also, sourcing optimization tools, at least most of them, will allow or should allow real-time bid feedback. So this is systematically generated feedback for each line item in your bid or individual bid fields that's personalized for each bidder. That single feature yields consistently across our customer base about 3% price compression. So think of like traffic lights or ranking ranges based upon, again, real-time bid statistics or it could be your target rates and things like that. So 3%, that's huge. So think of your largest spend size. If you can shave off 3% just from one feature, that's usually a pretty big number. And then go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the flexibility, like in real life use case, this really means you don't need to take out the complexity of your event, but you will be able to allow the suppliers to submit the quotes openly. So you'll be able to explore what they can do for you.
And one of the key things, obviously, the second box there, scenario analysis. So it's not as simple as just awarding to the lowest bid on each item in almost every case with any kind of event with any kind of complexity. There's many price and non-price factors that must be included and quantified. So things like, delivered versus non-delivered price. What's the fastest transit time, the best warranty, highest score, sustainability, that's a hot topic now, diversity, supplier performance. Maybe you want to look at the highest, you want to optimize on the highest profit margins. So that's just to name a few. So sourcing optimization will really allow you to understand the cost impact of all of those kinds of constraints in near real time with literally 3 clicks of a mouse. And we'll provide some other examples later on during the presentation. And then scalability, Martin, you can attest to this.
No worries. I just wanted to add on your point again within the real life example of the cost being visualized for the individual restrictions and constraints you build into your scenarios. That will enable you to moderate the stakeholder decisions and will give you facts for your awarding as you are finding the decision.
Yeah, and scalability in many categories, you might have to conduct really big sourcing events. So you need definitely a solution that can scale. So some of these events might involve 1,000 plus suppliers, 10,000 plus line items, individual line items, which could result in millions of bids. So, but even small events sometimes can warrant sourcing optimization because complexity might be you just have a lot of locations like in a retail situation, or you might have capacity, minimum order quantity, or many cost breakouts. So even if you have 50 line items, there could be a lot of embedded complexity within there that would warrant sourcing optimization as well. And of course, app-based, it's in the cloud, so no more emailing spreadsheets back and forth. I don't have to tell you what that causes in terms of normalizing data and data cleanup. That all goes away.
Yeah, and an additional benefit you will definitely see is the documentation of your awarding process. So you'll have all the information in one place, documented for all the purposes you might need later on.
Great. Okay, I think that was an excellent overview of what sourcing optimization brings to the table. And often, of course, many times people are trying to handle these things through workarounds, right? If they don't have a technology to do this, but they do want to achieve some of these things. We'll talk a bit later about Excel and things that people are doing to try to work around this. We talked before about the ROI. Just very quickly, here's some real world examples for customers in different categories of events that have been run. And you can see really across, everything from packaging to truckload events, even, full truckload, less than truckload, things like marketing services and the indirect side, MRO. We're seeing real dollar hard savings, but also there's other benefits such as you now have 100% of your data is centralized and traceable for all of these bidding activities. And the time savings here, we'll talk about this a little bit more as well. But just kind of given some overview on that. So the solution opportunity. So, one of the things we just recently launched a new ebook about the topic of sourcing optimization and how to make a business case for it. And in that book, we talked about the sourcing rut. And really the sourcing rut is, okay, a lot of teams are feeling stuck. They're using the same tools, things are getting more difficult, and they're not really getting new results. So maybe it's time to try something new, right? So sourcing optimization could help you move forward and find that new value, but there are a lot of people or a lot of things keeping folks stuck, anywhere from complexity to disruption to even team and organizational issues. So let me throw this to Martin to start on this one. What are some of you work with customers all the time on once they become customers to help them run their events and get successful. What are some of the challenges that you're hearing from them and why they came to sourcing optimization?
Yeah, so what we often hear is that the complexities in procurement, they really reflect the challenges in supply chain. And those are the obvious ones that we have dealt with for years, that like capacity restrictions that are regional and global. We also see a lot of effort on mitigating risks by multiple source strategies and building scenarios around it. But there's new aspects as well. So there are coming new stakeholders and new goals to the table that needs to be addressed in procurement decisions. And there's a lot of constraints and rules around CSR and sustainability that have to be taken into account when building an awarding scenario. And obviously, I guess they will agree there's a lot of unknowns we face all the time. And there's an immediate one, the pandemic, and maybe even the Suez Canal. And if you don't have the tools on your hand that enable you to react on those quickly, you might end up in a situation.
Yeah, great. David, anything to add from your side in terms of these points?
No, I think Martin covered them. Yeah, I think we can move on.
So I think, what this results in is folks turning to other ways of trying to get it done. So, we have this sort of fun slide about spreadsheets being kind of the retro tool. Now, let's face it, spreadsheets are always going to have a place in the workplace. They're never going to go away, right? They're the easiest, fastest, most flexible, versatile thing that people can turn to for anything, you know, almost anything. But what are the, you know, why can't a spreadsheet be sufficient to do what these sourcing optimization can do?
Yeah, so I guess everybody in procurement knows the case where they send out the Excel spreadsheet to the bidders to get it back with a column deleted, making their analysis almost impossible.
Sorry, Martin, you're breaking up a little bit. If you could get closer to your microphone.
Oh, yeah, is it better?
Yes.
Yeah, so what I was explaining is kind of the obvious case probably everybody in procurement faced with suppliers sending back their Excel spreadsheet with their offer with some columns deleted, making it almost impossible to analyze again. And it's really only the top of the iceberg. It's often you build extensive scenarios and spend hours in Excel finding your awarding decision just to learn that your supplier sends you a new offer and you can start again.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, if you're using Excel today, in many cases, you're limiting the number of suppliers that you invite to the sourcing event because it just becomes unwieldy to collect that, normalize the data. That goes away. There's no extra effort in a sourcing optimization tool, whether you invite 50 suppliers or 200 suppliers. And by inviting more suppliers, I talked about the real-time traffic light feedback. That drives that 3% conservative price compression. You're leaving that on the table. So all those extra suppliers can help with that price compression. So I think that's a you know, definitely a huge advantage. And we see that a lot. We see people that will come to us and say, oh, we want to invite these 15 suppliers. And we're like, we know there's a lot more suppliers out there. Why not invite more? And they're like, well, we don't want all of that. We can't manage all of that. Well, you don't have to award to 100 suppliers. So we'll talk about the scenario analysis a little bit later in the presentation, but, you know, trying to change that mindset that you have to limit your supply base.
I mean, I think that, I mean, it just shows that this is really a perfect use case for technology, right? I mean, technology is meant to solve some of these complicated problems and help scale things that, you know, are worthy of scaling. And so this is a great example of that. So this slide, it's a lot to kind of take in, but perhaps David, you can walk us through what we're seeing here in terms of, you know, the other issue is, of course, how much time are we spending trying to accomplish some of these things? And this slide brings some of that to light.
Yeah, I mean, you always start with your data, right? So there's not enormous time savings in the actual creation of the event until, you know, going forward, you can copy that previous event, and then there's, you know, within minutes, you could be up and running. But even within the bid creation step, modern sourcing optimization tools have built-in artificial intelligence where you can drag and drop your data as it resides on your desktop, and the system figures out how to construct the bid to a point where almost 90 to 95% of your sourcing event is fully configured in many cases less than 10 seconds. So I always show that when I demonstrate the product. So we're making huge grounds on the actual building of an event from scratch there. Obviously, the gathering, we kind of covered that in the last slide, talking about the efficiency gains there versus emailing these things back and forth. But the real sweet spot is in the analysis and award. So it's modeling in all those non-price factors and in seconds understanding the cost impact. And what if things change, right? We had COVID hit, one of your key suppliers, you're right about to make your award, one of your key suppliers, you know, goes bankrupt, natural disaster, whatever it is. With a couple clicks of the mouse, you can re-optimize that and get the results versus going back to a spreadsheet that might have who knows how many lookup tables and macros and whatever else is going on and trying to reverse engineer everything again. I don't know if you want to add anything, Martin.
I think you covered it extensively.
Great. We are also getting some great questions from some of you in the audience. And I promise some of those things we're actually going to cover in the next few slides that our panelists will be discussing. And anything we don't cover, we'll definitely cover kind of towards the end or follow up with you afterwards. So let's talk about the different spend categories, you know, that many folks who are on today may be responsible for, we'll put them into sort of 4 buckets of transportation, packaging, direct materials, and indirects. But, I guess I'll start with you, Martin, on this one and put you in the hot seat. When you look at these categories, what are some examples of things or attributes that you're seeing with some of these categories that make them, great opportunities for sourcing optimization?
Yeah, so I like to differentiate 2 types of complexities in sourcing events. And one type of complexity is the size of it. You have lots of items, you have lots of suppliers, lots of sites you have to cover. And that's the case for transportation, that's the case for packaging. And you'll need a tool to handle this complexity in your scenario. The second type of complexity in sourcing events I often see is the sheer number of stakeholders that have to be involved in the decision, bringing different constraints on the table. And it's more the case for direct materials or maybe professional services. And there again, you can benefit of sourcing optimization using the scenarios and using the capability of modeling those restrictions into your awarding scenarios.
Because those stakeholders might want to give you different types of things to play with, right? In terms of your award allocations. Well, what if we tried this, or what if we did this?
That's exactly it. The case, and in sourcing optimization, you'll be able to model those different scenarios and show hard dollars. This decision costs X. This decision costs Y. Now it's up to you guys. You have to define what's the way to go.
Yeah, you might be a global corporation and you're running let's say a folding carton event for packaging, but you may have at each plant, with the packaging engineers, they may have preferences for different suppliers or different mandates. So they can still have a say in the award. And within, again, a couple of clicks of the mouse, you can model that in and understand the cost impact. So you could be on the phone with that packaging engineer and say, hey, listen, John, I know you want this supplier, but this is going to cost us, $500,000 to make this decision. Is it worth it? So you're going to have those sort of real-time analytics at your fingertips.
I think that, and you're both certainly familiar with the way procurement teams are organized. Sometimes transportation sort of lives in its own separate compartment, right? And the general procurement team. So there might be different tools used in different parts of the organization too.
Yeah, we see sometimes you'll run an event where you have like an FOB price and delivered price where they're actually understanding, is it better to have my supplier deliver the item, or is it better to use our own internal logistics? So we can do all those things can be done with an advanced sourcing optimization tool very easily and understand the cost impact, not only for each item, but overall as well. So again, you're talking seconds to have that visibility.
Yeah, but I guess the point is for sourcing optimization, it really can be an umbrella over all of these spend categories, right? So it's not, it has value across the whole organization, even if your procurement is decentralized in some way.
Absolutely. And decentralized and centralized procurement is an excellent example of scenarios that are worth running and exploring for savings. With a sourcing optimizer that allows you to run a larger event, more events, you can bundle the local events into one large, while keeping the ability to run smaller local award scenarios, but also looking at what will happen if we kind of work together and try to find a global solution.
Great. All right, so we talked about some scenarios. And the importance of scenario analysis. David, why don't you walk through some of these different examples of the types of things people can analyze in Keelvar and other sourcing optimizer tools?
Yeah, I could spend an hour on this slide, but as a blanket statement is, scenario rule options. So when you want to model something, you're only limited by the data within your sourcing event. So the more columns of data, item description columns you have, the more things you're collecting from the suppliers, the more options you have right out of the box. And as you layer in different constraints, the optimizer has to adhere to those constraints, and you'll understand the cost impact of those constraints, both at the item level as well as the overall savings or cost. Some typical rules we see, incumbency rules. That's probably something you're doing today, but an example might be, and this could be done in 3 seconds in a sourcing optimization tool. Award at least 200 items to each incumbent supplier, or maybe favor item level incumbents by 2%, or maybe award 70% of the volume to the lowest bid, but the other 30% to the incumbents per item. So, there's many, many different variations of what you can do with incumbency rules. Sustainability, again, real hot topic now. You might want to favor certified sustainable suppliers by a certain percent, or maybe tell the optimizer, hey, you need to award at least 50% of the items or volume to sustainable suppliers. You may have corporate mandates, things like that you have to adhere to. Reliability, favor a reliability score greater than 95 by $100, or maybe you want to optimize the award to the highest reliability and then compare it to the lowest cost. So a modern sourcing optimization tool should allow you to optimize so that higher values are better as well. So that's a key thing you want to look out for, like highest score, highest warranty terms, not just be able to optimize on lowest, because they're right out of the box, solvers and optimizers are geared to do that. You should be able to flip it though, because it comes in handy. Speed and delivery time, optimized by the fastest delivery time. We see this, we work with a lot of big pharmaceutical companies, and Martin, I know you've done a ton of these where they're running transit time optimizations and then comparing it to the lowest cost and understanding, that trade-off. So we do a lot of that. And capacity and minimum order quantity. So the ability to collect supplier capacity, not only at the item level, but at a higher rolled up level or levels that you define or the supplier defines, is really critical because they need a way of bidding on everything, but then having a way of kind of raising their hand and say, I bid on everything, not knowing what you're going to award to me, but I'm telling you, I can only commit to X number of units in this geographic area or out of this plant location. And all that feeds into optimization. And creative pricing, bundled offers, volume tiered offers, being able to have the optimization figure out, is it worth triggering one of these volume tiered offers that this supplier has created, or is it better to discreetly award those items or volume to possibly multiple suppliers? So mathematically, you start combining all these things together. Good luck in Excel. It's going to be a real big challenge. So again, 3 clicks of a mouse, you get the results. I don't know, Martin, do you have any other favorite scenarios that you run for customers?
Like the list is very exhaustive. What I would probably add, just to summarize it, is the sourcing optimization will enable you to assign visible cost to non-price factors. So you will be able to base your decisions on those with hard facts instead of feelings, to be honest.
And one of the questions that just came in from our very engaged audience, thank you all for the questions, and I think it's very relevant to what we were just talking about, is what is the sort of the training and level of skill expertise to use these types of tools, right? It almost can sound a little intimidating. Martin, you work on the customer success side. Let's start with you.
Yeah, and I guess a few of our slides that follow touch on this topic as well, just a little. So to be honest, there is some training needed, but it's nowhere compared to the legacy optimization where you needed shears of consultants and highly skilled professionals to run the events for you. It's really about understanding the data and what's in your quotes, and the imagination on building the rules. And it will take a training to explain how the rule building works. But that's really, we are talking about hours, not days. Thank you.
All right, moving along. So this kind of segues into, a little further off of that point we were just talking about is what is a typical rollout look like for this? Well, I think we see it all, right, Martin and David? I mean, but I would say, on the conservative side, we do get some teams that are, and this can happen where maybe you are only working with one group that's only responsible for a limited set of spend categories or subcategories, right? For example, if you're in transportation, they're not responsible for direct materials in transportation or, professional services. But a conservative rollout here, might be that you start with one category, and they might identify an annual strategic bidding event or tendering event that's coming up that they've decided this is going to be the first one that we're going to run sourcing optimization for. Once we now learn it and get up to speed on the tool, then we can maybe move into some tactical level bidding for that category when additional RFPs come up throughout the year, either on a monthly or quarterly basis. And then further out, they might decide, okay, well, then maybe now we'll roll this out to the next category once we know when their annual strategic event. So you're still getting great results from this, but obviously you're stretching out that ROI over a longer period of time, right, Martin?
Yeah, and I guess this roots in kind of the traditional optimization tools back in the days, back in the 2000s. They really needed specialists trained and consultants to run your event. So you have a long lead times preparing the event and getting all the data and waiting for the right event to launch. But with modern tools, you'll be able to start much quicker.
And this next visual kind of shows, we had another question come in from one of our attendees about whether it makes sense to have a centralized team, like a center of excellence team that's trained on sourcing optimization, who can then help roll it out at a much bigger scale in a shorter time frame, so that you're really realizing ROI on perhaps a faster pace and impacting more spend categories within those first 12 to 18 months. And that does happen with some of our customers. We do have many customers who have like a center of excellence team. So perhaps, Martin, I'll have you start with this one as well, and then David chime in on how something like this would look for a rollout. Yeah,
I'll have to stick to my consulting background here and tell you it really depends. It's hard to say for everybody. I guess the important fact is how is your procurement organization built out today? And if it's decentral, I really don't see a point on building a central unit there just for optimization.
Right.
Modern things are easy enough to learn by individual procurement teams, and I guess there's in the moment I guess there's no point having a central unit specialized on this one only.
Yeah, this was a popular theme, I think, with earlier sourcing optimization tools because they were quite involved. It took days of training. So they would have a center of excellence that would build the events on behalf of many other buyers. But I think with the more modern sourcing optimization tools, you could be up and running, and with literally a couple hours of training, they usually get the confidence that, hey, this is pretty easy stuff. I don't need to go to that COE to build out my event anymore. It's drag and drop. It's super intuitive. And that kind of is a segue into a couple of slides down the road here. So, yeah.
All right. So I think, really what we're aiming to do is really help companies understand that there is a very strong business case here for expanding the use of sourcing optimization across their different spend categories and even getting more users trained up on the products. At Keelvar, these are certainly the three key benefits we most often see, which is the hard dollar financial savings really is sort of the core benefit that folks can measure. We talked about the time and productivity savings, which not just happens at a per event, but again, you're reducing that time to award, right? But you're also, by using sourcing optimization, you can get a lot more done much faster. So productivity can go up, but at the same time. And then the quality and the risk, this is an often overlooked benefit, but a lot of procurement teams are concerned about process consistency, data quality, compliance. What are you both hearing about that as an area right now and how this relates?
Martin, I'll let you.
Yeah, so the obvious one is reducing business, and there's the one's been there for a while, but I guess we mentioned in the beginning that sourcing optimization tool will kind of document the full process for you, leaving the trail for traceability, for points how your decision was taken and why, showing the great detail of your evolving thoughts in the scenarios. So it eventually, if you keep consistent and if you keep running your events using the tool, you will certainly improve on compliance, as well as kind of on the process, and eventually also save efforts with the events built in the tool.
Yeah, you can layer risk into your optimizations as well. I mean, you can factor those things in, even if it's, award at least 2 suppliers on each item, so you have a backup supplier. It could be might have risk scores, and again, you might want to optimize on the higher the score is better, and then compare it. What's the cost trade-off? Are we willing to take a little bit more risk, to have this big bucket of savings that we're looking at here? So.
So one question that we've got from a few different folks, stated a few different ways, but the question is essentially the same, is how does sourcing optimization, let me boil down their question to the basic essence of the question, which is how does sourcing optimization coexist with like a general sourcing product or e-sourcing tool that's out there? How do companies determine, I guess, first of all, we do have, at Keelvar, we do have integration with SAP Ariba as an example, but we also have customers who make some sort of matrix around what types of spends they might put through a basic e-auction tool versus the types of spends that would go through sourcing optimization. And that's where the coexistence happens.
Yeah, there's usually not a huge overlap. It's usually a pretty pretty obvious decision tree of where you would go to a traditional inline sourcing tool. So compliance, maybe your company says, all right, if the spend is over $1,000, you have to get 3 bids, and you have to just do a real quick bid. You could use sourcing optimization for that, but why would you, right? So there's always still a purpose for that. I like to call it inline sourcing tool. But once you get into the complexities that we spoke about in the earlier slides, it's usually a very easy decision. Now, what we're seeing in the marketplace, because sourcing optimization tools are becoming so much easier to use versus even 5 years ago, we're seeing a big shift where a lot of these categories that used to get sifted to the inline basic sourcing tool or Excel, people are rethinking that and saying, wait a minute, we can take advantage of these cool features like real-time feedback that's driving this awesome price compression. Why not throw it through sourcing optimizer? So we're seeing a trend that more and more throughput is going through sourcing optimization.
Exactly. I would maybe only add a real-life example of an event where you have 10 line items. And if you have to find a solution awarding to a maximum of 3 suppliers with some risk mitigation on 2 of those, running this analysis in Excel will cost you hours, and in sourcing optimization is literally minutes.
Great. Thank you both. Hopefully that was helped to answer those questions. So just to kind of wrap up here, there are multiple sourcing optimization tools out on the market. Keelvar, we of course believe ours is quite special, and we hope that folks will contact us for a demo and to see it in action. But one of the things that, when we look at the customers that are choosing Keelvar, we sort of have started developing some differentiation about how we compare to other tools on the market, which led us to create sort of a guiding list. And many can argue that, gee, your list here certainly points people to Keelvar, but I think that it is important for folks to think about what is important to them. So not everything on this list may be a critical decision factor for you, but we're putting them in the buckets of usability, in terms of user adoption, ease of use, flexibility, innovation, in terms of, is the company innovating? Where are they heading? I mean, we certainly are moving in the direction of automating a lot of this activity and workload with our automation product direction in addition to the optimization, for example. But is there anything on this list, Martin and David, that jumps out at you as some differentiating criteria? I know, Martin, you're going to certainly probably hone in on the customer commitment piece, given your role. But what jumps out at you as some things that you think is really important for folks to take a look at when they're looking at different options?
Yeah, without a doubt, 100%. So I guess another blanket statement, first of all, not all sourcing optimization tools are the same. You can have the most powerful optimization tool in the world, but if nobody in your organization knows how to use it, it does you absolutely no good. So usability, I think, is probably number one in my opinion, what you want to consider when you're evaluating tools. If the users are aimlessly clicking through endless menu options where there's no logical flow, adoption is going to be a huge challenge, and that has big time repercussions. And I think that I can't say, like, when I demo our product, I build 1,000+ item transportation event in under 2 minutes from scratch from an Excel file. If a vendor can't do that, drag and drop and have the AI assist with the building of a really complex event live in front of you, you may want to move on. So that's a key factor. It's got to be easy to use. Flexibility. Martin can attest to this. You got to be able to have a solution that uses your columns that you want, your bid fields, your formulas, no matter how complex. There shouldn't be a formula in Excel that the tool can't model. And it's got to have the horsepower to really handle big events in many cases. A modern tool also has, I think there was something in the chat around integrations. A modern tool should have, it should be integration friendly. There are some legacy systems out there. You mentioned the word integration. They don't like to hear that, right? So you've got to have more. A modern tool has the infrastructure and the plumbing, if you will, to possibly tie into your TMS, to your ERP, to supply chain visibility tools, you name it. It should be that easy, and it should be a plug and play. And innovation, key. So we are focused 100% on sourcing optimization. We're not focused on downstream products and so on. Actually, 80% of our employees are researchers and developers. And why that's important, and there's other vendors out there as well, but you want to find a provider that's not moving slowly to enhance and modernize their technology, because that's going to have huge consequences. Like we're bringing out things in our product, and others are as well, that are moving the needle. Hard dollar savings, huge advantages, competitive advantages for your organization. Things like autopilot. Jennifer mentioned our sourcing bots. These are not future state. These are actually running on behalf of customers today. So we're baking more of that automation and AI in our product. It's not just buzzwords. We actually have it in our product working today. You want to be with a company that's very forward thinking and built on a modern architecture.
There's not much to add to, maybe only the speed, how fast you can start up using your optimizer. And that's a crucial one. So if you have an event in your pipeline that's a week away, you should be able to do it with your tool.
Great. And certainly the commitment to the customer's success part of it, Martin, I think that's something we've always taken very seriously here at Keelvar, is being accessible to our customers and being responsive to them.
Yeah, I guess that's our standard.
I will give kudos to Martin's team. It's white glove service. We're not afraid to, a lot of these guys are data scientists. They're not afraid to dig in your data and really assist you with building out crazy formulas, like if you're doing air freight events, things like that. We were just talking about that before the call. We'll dig in. We'll get you on your way.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think just kind of to wrap up, Keelvar we have our sourcing optimizer is our core platform, and that's where you run, both your e-auction as well as your sourcing optimization events. And we have workflow automations baked into the core platform, things around like fast, rapid event startup, auto piloting, bid data validation, things like that. And then, as we mentioned, the sourcing bots can actually integrate with sourcing optimizer. What they do is automate a lot of the activity that happens with starting up, creating, running, managing those events. So taking a lot of that tedious work away from the human resource, and freeing up their time for higher value purposes, while the bot takes care of some of these really low level but time consuming tasks when it's a human that's doing that work. And then we have our digital rate card repository, fulfillment optimizer that automatically stores all the rates, and it is used by our automation to help go search and source new rates. So that's the product suite in a nutshell. I want to thank everybody for attending. We promised 45 minutes. We are right there. I know there are more questions that we didn't get to. We will definitely be following up with all of you in the next 24 hours who have unanswered questions. Martin and David, any kind of closing comments? I want to thank you both for your time today.
No, thanks everyone.
Yeah,
all right. Thank you both, and have a great rest of your day to everybody who's attending. We appreciate it. Bye.